Just quickly, one thought on this analogy that Senator Paul was making regarding how a family may not borrow money in order to make a charitable contribution to their church. I think for a lot of us, that's not what we view these investments in foreign aid. We view them as integral to our national security policy, as the investments that we're making in the submarines and the jet engines and the helicopters that we produce in Connecticut. So this is not something we are doing out of goodwill. This is part and parcel of a broader national security strategy. Second, the overview that you began with, the U.S. and the State Department engaged in more places in the world than ever before, squares with the reality that a lot of people believe exists, which is a world that is more chaotic than ever before. The truth of the matter is, as you've pointed out, is that the number of people across the world who are dying from acts of violence, who are dying as the result of war, is actually declining, has been declining for a long time. And it speaks to our ability to find ways out of conflicts other than war, something we haven't been so good at in the past that we're much better at today. And so I just say that as a means of congratulating you on a number of seminal diplomatic achievements that are important in and of themselves. The text in the agreements, whether it be the Iran nuclear agreement, the climate change agreement, or this ceasefire. But they also remind people all around the world of the gains that have been achieved, the lives that have been saved, because we figured out over time that as important it is to have strong militaries, it's much more important to take chances, to take risks on diplomacy. More of them pan out than don't pan out. Which brings me to a question. You've got in this budget I think a near doubling of funding for CVE, for countering violent extremism. That's a smart investment. I know you want to spend more if you could, because we're cutting off the roots of extremism before it gets to the branches. Smart strategy. But here's my worry. My worry is that the impact of these funding increases are going to be blotted out by the advantage that accrues to extremist groups by virtue of this widening proxy war between Iran and Saudi Arabia in the region. And it's certainly playing out to an extent in Syria. But I want to ask you about our policy in Yemen today. There's a BBC story today that says Yemen conflict, Al-Qaeda joins coalition battle for Taiz. And the underlying analysis is that increasingly there's some pretty deep integration between elements of Al-Qaeda and elements of the coalition, a coalition that does include the United States, not on the ground, but in terms of the support that we've given for the Saudi air campaign. And as I read the conflict in Yemen, I have a hard time figuring out what the U.S. national security interests are, given the fact that the result of the coalition campaign has been to kill a lot of civilians, has been to sow the seeds of humanitarian crisis, and to create space for these groups, these very extremist groups that we claim to be our priority in the region, to grow, whether it be ISIS or Al-Qaeda in Yemen. I just wanted to ask about the future of the U.S. involvement on the Saudi side of this conflict in Yemen, and to just talk to us about why we should continue to fund munitions requests from the Saudi government that end up in that fight.
Well, Senator, good question, and the answer is very straightforward, that the Saudis are part of our coalition, part of our GCC link to pushing back against nefarious activities in the region. And the Saudis were threatened very, very directly by the combination of the Houthi and some Iranian input, and as a result, felt they had to defend themselves, and we supported their right to do that. Now, we are urging them very strongly to get to the table and to negotiate a resolution to this. And we believe that there is a certain ripeness to that. And it would be better for everybody if we were able to achieve that. Now, there's some complications with it, obviously. You have former President Saleh, who has made life difficult in this whole process. And our hope is that we're working with the Omanis, with the Saudis, and with the Emiratis and other friends in the region to try to see if we can't now get back to the table. The UN is engaged, as you know. There's supposed to be talks that are going to take place shortly, and our hope is that this can end. A lot of civilians have, unfortunately, been impacted as a consequence of what's been going on. And I think the heart of the matter is that we are urging diplomacy at this moment to try to see if we can't bring this to a close. And I think it would be to everybody's interest if that were to happen. It would also provide a capacity to be able to focus more on Daesh and to get the forces that are there that have been distracted from the Daesh effort realigned and refocused.
I think at the root of your answer is that the alliance between the United States and Saudi Arabia requires us to come to their aid when they feel threatened. And I guess my pitch is that I hope that that would not be the default proposition if this proxy war widens in the region. I think it frankly provides incentive and impetus for the proxy war to widen if the Saudis know that wherever they go, the U.S. is very close behind. And the more instability that this proxy war seeds, the more room there is for these groups to grow.
There's a distinction between a proxy war, as you describe it, and the threat that the Saudis faced as a consequence of what was happening right on their neighborhood, right on their border, and across their border. So we chose to support that. We would not be supporting a longer sort of proxy kind of effort, and that's one of the reasons why I say to you we think it's important now to get to the table and negotiate.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.